Our next speaker is Ali Petrosova. Ali is the Associate Director of Consulting Program and Climate Research for Good Energy and has spearheaded bold storytelling projects at the intersection of Hollywood and climate with studio executives, showrunners, screenwriters, and organizations like Spotify, Wondery, and CBC. Ali was the creative director of the Climate Imaginations Network under renowned scientist Dr. Kate Marvel. She has an MA in Climate and Society as a graduate of the inaugural class of the Columbia Climate School and also a BFA in film at the Cooper Union. Please welcome to the stage, Ali.
I have a clicker here. Hold on. I remember the first time I explicitly wrote about climate change. I was in Washington Square Park, and I had just stayed home for a week grieving my future. I wrote, "It was a perfect summer day, except for the fact that it was mid-October. The sun looked me dead in the eye, the jazz musicians played like they always did in Washington Square Park. A monarch butterfly floated overhead. I closed my eyes, sure it was a mirage. But when I opened them, the monarch had landed on me. The park was full of people, but nobody seemed concerned that it was 86 degrees. Not a single leaf had fallen, and the monarch was nowhere near Mexico. When I lived in Los Angeles, the plainness of seasons was a certainty. I never thought I'd find the same in Manhattan. I wondered whether they were gone for good, and as if to rub salt in my wound, the jazz trumpets started playing Vernon Duke's Autumn in New York. I looked down one last time, and my mirage was gone. Before this, I was studying to be an artist, and I was set on building my own future, not the planetary one. In one of my seminar classes at the Cooper Union, I was exposed to BIPOC artists, architects, engineers, lawyers, poets, all who told me that the world was going to look very different very soon. This, in combination with the IPCC report coming out, the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation hearings, endless EPA regulation rollbacks, just to name a few, really forced me to pivot. I knew from then on out that climate would have to be included in my career. Fast forward a couple months, I co-founded the Cooper Climate Coalition. $20,000 later, and a hesitant blessing from the university, we brought together renowned experts like Naomi Klein, Mary Robinson, and Bill McKibben, and we participated in direct action. By the time I had graduated, we had gotten through to the board. While I was still an undergrad, I landed a 10-week contract on the climate research team of the show Extrapolations, a TV show of 8 interwoven stories that explore the intimate, life-changing choices that must be made in a climate-changed world. I spent these months mapping the decline of civilization. We mapped the future of everything from technology to sex to public health to the extinction of the Pinot Noir grape. In retrospect, I had no idea that this would lead into my career. There was no conversation at the time about climate in Hollywood, and by the end of my time at Cooper, I felt like I had read everything I could on climate, and that it all started to sound the same. And I knew if I was properly going to understand the nuances and become a translator, I had to learn the science. And that's how I found myself at grad school in the climate school at Columbia University, where I now teach. There, through all the quantitative mathematics, modeling, and physics, I was pretending my hardest to understand. I found new words: culture change and storytelling. This is my favorite framework of understanding culture change. This is the pace layering framework created by the Long Now Foundation. And what this framework argues is that change at the upper layers is faster and easier. And the deeper you get into the framework, the longer and more difficult it is to create change. So, for example, at the fashion layer, we have faster change than the commerce layer, but it also goes away faster. Change at the culture layer takes longer than change at the governance layer, but at the same time, it lasts longer. And just one piece of clarity, that is human nature, not Mother Nature. And so articulating my interest in this is how I found myself at Good Energy. Good Energy is a nonprofit unlocking the power of TV and film to inspire courage and action in the face of climate change. We support the creation of scripted TV and film that honestly reflect the world we live in now and helps us build a better future. The climate crisis is the biggest story of our time. The stories we tell must reflect the reality of the climate crisis and imagine riveting climate futures. And so this slide shows research that we did on scripts written over a 5-year period. So from 2016 to 2020, we found that less than 3% of TV and film acknowledged the climate crisis, and just 0.56% used the words climate change. This study also found that only 10% of all extreme weather events were linked to climate change in these pieces of media, and that just misses a really easy opportunity. Obviously, these numbers are way too low, so our goal is to increase them. We also learned that audiences felt that fictional characters were less concerned about climate change than they were. Not portraying climate concerns risks making characters less relatable. That is why we created a tool that we call the Climate Lens, which is a storytelling tool that imagines climate change as a generative lens through which to imagine any aspect of any story, regardless of genre. Climate connects to all different aspects of our lives and stories. It connects to all other issues we care about, and it is inherently integrated and intersectional. There are endless ways to talk about climate characters, so let's walk through the way we've broken them out. We've developed the spectrum as a tool to help writers really break down the different ways that climate can show up, and we're going to go through a few examples. So first we have climate placement. This is when characters enact climate-friendly behaviors, or we see a climate impact or solution woven into the setting or set design of a story, but it might not be addressed or mentioned directly in dialogue. So in the 2019 film Parasite, the Kim's family basement apartment is flooded by a severe storm caused by climate change. Climate isn't mentioned explicitly in the dialogue, but the severity makes it clear, as does the focus on the intersection of climate and class as shown through the characters. While the wealthy Park family finds the rain to be merely an inconvenience, ruining their camping trip, the Kims, like so many people living in poverty today, lose their home, their possessions, and are displaced. And the severe floods are a real climate impact, increasingly affecting South Korea. The next one we have is climate mention. So even characters mentioning climate change in passing is so helpful. It normalizes talking about the climate crisis in daily life. One of our favorite examples is Abbott Elementary, and although Quinta delicately grapples with other issues like race and public education, she finds clever ways to bring in climate change through humor as well. In the show, famously, Principal Ava Coleman says it's hotter than the devil's booty hole. And a student says to one of their teachers, Jacob, "But you said we'll be dead in 20 years, to which the professor, Jacob, responds, "Unless we act now." So, of course, humor is a great way that we can approach climate. And here's Quinta herself saying, I don't like to be too on the nose in Abbott. I'm a medicine in the applesauce kind of girl, but I care very much about climate change and bring it up in any ways that I can in the show. She just did an amazing talk at Sundance. I highly recommend it. Next is climate world, which is when climate-related events influence the story worlds, the culture, and the characters in meaningful ways, but the film or show isn't directly about the climate crisis. In the show Big Little Lies, second grader Amabella has an anxiety attack as her teacher dissects the sustainability narrative of Charlotte's Web. Her high-strung mother, Renata, goes into the school to complain about the curriculum and threatens to buy every single student a polar bear as soon as she's rich again. And this actually started a social media movement of teenagers and adults tweeting hashtag I am Amabella. So clearly this narrative around anxiety really resonated with folks. And lastly, we have climate character. So we've come full circle back to extrapolations. Climate characters we describe as a film or show largely about the climate crisis, in that its characters and plot are primarily driven by climate change and or its impacts. So in extrapolations, we have characters like a rabbi and a bat mitzvahed young girl in a faith crisis, an animal exit interviewer, a billionaire on a mission to save the world, to an eco-terrorist willing to risk her life to deploy a geoengineering solutions. Extrapolation serves us an entire menu of characters to choose from, and I have some unreleased research up here, but we just did an impact study partnering with the USC Norman Lear Center, where we found that the majority of our participants, so 80% of our participants, reported that extrapolations affected the way that they think, feel, behave with respect to environmental and climate issues, and most of them also responded reporting taking some sort of action after viewing the show, which is amazing. So our approach, we have 4 different main program areas. I lead our consulting program, which is the hands-on work we do with our writers. We do workshops, so these are usually 1 hour to 90-minute training sessions where we really walk writers, creative executives, producers, etc., through the climate lens. And usually it's not me describing what the films are. We'll actually watch the clips together and discuss them, and then go into a mock writer's room. We have the playbook, which is an online resource. I brought teasers for you all, they're somewhere. But the playbook was written for screenwriters, by screenwriters, and operates as a menu of opportunities that are kind of in between utopia and dystopia, right? Where is that gray, messy middle that we want to see? And then, of course, kind of real-life events where we build community together. And so why is this important? Why this matters? We need a better future. According to a study run by Stanford, 77% of young people globally feel that the future is frightening due to climate change. And 46% of them say they don't want to have kids because of climate change. Also, we know now that denial is not dominant. According to Yale, 4 out of 5 people around the world support doing whatever it takes to limit climate change. There's also a misconception that especially Americans are in denial of climate change, but a study run by Yale has proven that 75% of Americans are worried. And finally, people relate to climate. As I said earlier in the research, the audience analysis, we said, folks feel that the fictional characters don't share their same levels of concerns. And the risks making TV and film characters less relatable as their world's realities continue to depart from ours. So to wrap it up, stories that move audiences move the world. Good energy is built on that fundamental truth. Dry facts don't move people, stories do. It's through stories that we learn to empathize with the people outside ourselves and absorb crucial information about our world. Stories shape attitudes and drive action. Thank you all.